Shown from Silent Fire, an invitation to Western Mysticism, with the section from Simone Weil, page 224. There was a young English Catholic there. This is a spiritual autobiography. There was a young English Catholic there from whom I gained my first idea of the supernatural power of the sacraments because of the truly angelic radiance from which he seemed to be clothed after going to communion. Chance, for I always prefer saying chance rather than providence, made of him a messenger to me, for he told me of the existence of those English poets of the 17th century who are named metaphysical. See, Simone Weil is French, I believe. In reading them later on, I discovered the poem of which I read to you, which is unfortunately a very inadequate translation. It is called Love by George Herbert. I learned it by heart. Often at the culminating point of a violent headache, I made myself say it over, concentrating my attention upon it and clinging with all my soul to the tenderness it enshrines. I used to think I was merely reciting it as a beautiful poem. But without my knowing it, the recitation had the virtue of a prayer. It was during one of these recitations that, as I told you, Christ himself came down and took possession of me. In my arguments about the insolubility of the problem of God, I had never foreseen the possibility of that, of a real contact, person to person here below, between a human being and God. I had vaguely heard tell of things of this kind, but I had never believed in them. In the Fororeti, the accounts of apparitions rather put me off, if anything, like the miracles of the gospel. Moreover, in this sudden possession of me by Christ, neither my sense nor my imagination had any part. I only felt, in the midst of my suffering, the presence of a love, like that which one can read in the smile on a beloved face. I had never read any mystical works because I had never felt any call to read them. In reading, as in all the things, I have always striven to practice obedience. There is nothing more favorable to intellectual progress, for as far as possible, I only read what I am hungry for at the moment when I have an appetite for it, and then I do not read. I eat. God, in his mercy, had prevented me from reading the mystics so that it should be evident to me that I had not invented this absolutely unexpected contact. Yet I still have refused, not my love, but my intelligence, for it seemed to me certain, and I still think so today, that one can never wrestle enough with God if one does so out of pure regard for the truth. Christ likes us to prefer truth to him because before being Christ, he is truth. If one turns aside from him to go towards the truth, one will not go far before falling into his arms. After this, I came to feel that Plato was a mystic, that all the Iliad is bathed in Christian light, and that Dionysus and Osiris are, in a certain sense, Christ himself, and my love was thereby redoubled. I never wondered whether Jesus was or was not the incarnation of God, but in fact, I was incapable of thinking of him without thinking of him as God. In the spring of 1940, I read the Bhagavad Gita. Strange to say, it was in reading those marvelous words with such a Christian sound, put into the mouth of an incarnation of God, that I came to feel strongly that we owe an allegiance to religious truth, which is quite different from the admiration we accord to a beautiful poem, which is something far more categorical. Yet I do not believe it to be possible for me to consider the question of baptism. I felt that I could not honestly give up my opinions concerning the non-Christian religions and concerning Israel, and as a matter of fact, time and meditation have only served to strengthen them, and I thought that this constituted an absolute obstacle. I did not imagine it as possible that a priest could even dream of granting me baptism. If I had not met you, I should never have considered the problem of baptism as a practical problem. During all this time of spiritual progress, I had never prayed. I was afraid of the power of suggestion that is in prayer, the very power for which Pascal recommends it. Pascal's method seems to me one of the worst for attaining faith. Contact with you was not able to persuade me to pray. On the contrary, I thought the danger was all the greater, since I also had to beware the power of suggestion in my friendship with you. At the same time, I found it very difficult not to pray and not to tell you so. Moreover, I knew I could not tell you without completely misleading you about myself. At that time, I should not have been able to make you understand. Till last September, I had never once prayed in all my life, at least not in the literal sense of the word. I had never said any words to God, either out loud or mentally. I have never pronounced a liturgical prayer. I had occasionally recited the Salve Regina, but only as a beautiful poem. Last summer, doing Greek with tea, I went through the Our Father word for word in Greek. We promised each other to learn it by heart. I do not think he ever did so, but some weeks later, as I was turning over the pages of the Gospel, I said to myself that since I had promised to do this thing and it was good, I ought to do it. I did it. The infinite sweetness of this Greek text so took hold of me that for several days I could not stop myself from saying it over all the time. A week afterwards, I began the vine harvest. I recited the Our Father in Greek every day before work, and I repeated it very often in the vineyard. Since that time, I have made a practice of saying it through once each morning with absolute attention. If during the recitation my attention wanders and goes to sleep in the minutest degree, I begin again until I have once succeeded in going through it with absolutely pure attention. Sometimes it comes about that I say it again out of sheer pleasure, but I only do it if I really feel the impulse. The effect of this practice is extraordinary and surprises me every time, for although I experience it each day, it exceeds my expectation at each repetition. Very good. We're reading from The Silent Fire, edited by Capps and Wright. An old book, 5 95. Old book.